This is our news, the weekend edition, and on the broadcast tonight, police shoot and kill a wanted criminal. The details straight ahead. Plus, another traffic fatality here on the streets of the capital. And another showdown with the European Union could be looming, and a leading accountant is encouraging governments to be prepared.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Good evening, I'm Andrew Nolt, and thanks so much for joining us. Topping the news, the hunt for a wanted man ended fatally yesterday evening after he engaged officers in a shootout. The suspect has since been identified as 35-year-old Dario Tinka, aka Geico of East Street. He was wanted for questioning by police in connection with several serious crimes, including armed robbery and rape. And when officers finally caught up with Tinker yesterday evening, a deadly shootout ensued.
This individual was wanted for a few weeks now, maybe 1 or 2 months that he was wanted. We were up and about looking for him. Persons continued to call and give information on him, and he was keep slipping through.
But it was through intel and assistance from the public, which led officers to Williams Lane off Shirley Street Friday evening. It's where they would spot the suspect, Dario Tinka, getting into a small silver vehicle. And as officers approached, things took a turn for the worst.
The individual made an attempt to reverse to drive off, pinning 2 of the officers between the vehicles. He then produced a firearm and fired at the officers. Officers being in fear of return fire, the individual was fatally shot right here.
The vehicle was bullet-ridden with 3 gunshots to the windshield and quite a few on both sides of the car. The license disc and plate attached did not match. It turns out it was a stolen vehicle, one that Assistant Commissioner Fernandez says was taken during an armed robbery just a few days ago. A loaded pistol was also recovered from between the seats.
The officers are shaken up, but no injuries to any of the officers, but they are shaken up, and they will seek whatever attention from the hospital if they feel that there are some injuries upon them. But
now, as with all police-involved shootings, Her Majesty's Coroner Janine Weish Gomez was on the scene to investigate. And despite the amount of police shootings there have been for the year so far, Assistant Commissioner Fernandez says the force's integrity remains intact.
The officers, their life is on the line as well. And there's a process, and that's what is going, the process. The Madam Coroner, who have since visited this scene as well, and those matters are under active investigation. And I don't want to get into it because they are still under active investigation at the coroner's court. And the coroner has already visited this scene tonight, and she was briefed and properly updated. So the matter now is in the hands of the coroner.
Meantime, the country's traffic fatality count up a notch after a man was struck and killed. According to reports, the victim was attempting to cross Robinson Road in the vicinity of Washington Street shortly after 10 last night when he was struck by a red truck, which did not stop and continued traveling in an eastern direction. The victim was taken to hospital, but however, he would succumb to his injuries a short while later. Traffic police are appealing to members of the public, especially those who would have been in the area at the time of the incident and may have information that can assist in identifying or locating the driver to contact them. 2 men are in hospital with gunshot wounds from 2 separate incidents after they were involved in overnight shootings. The first occurred just before 1 this morning. A man was standing in his yard on Cascarilla Street in Pinewood Gardens when he was approached by 2 armed men who demanded cash. However, after not receiving their demand, they shot the man before running away. The man was taken to hospital where he is listed in serious but stable condition. Then around the same time, another man was standing in front of his home on Royal Palm Street when the occupants of a white Nissan pulled up and shot him before speeding away. The victim was transported to hospital where he is also listed in serious but stable condition. Investigations into both matters are ongoing. Meantime, police over in Grand Bahama are investigating an incident involving an American tourist who reportedly severed his arm. Not much information to report on what exactly happened, but our news understands that police were called to a marina in West End on Friday afternoon to an incident involving an American-owned vessel and a group of American visitors. The group was reportedly diving in the area when one of the male visitors received serious injuries where his left arm was severed. He was transported to the Rand Memorial Hospital and is listed in serious condition. In other news this evening, the Bahamas' showdown with the European Union is not over just yet. In another 6 months, the Bahamas will again face the Code of Conduct group with the threat of blacklisting looming. Bahamas Chartered Accountants President Gowan Bowe says the Bahamas should not be reactive in their approach to the EU, but rather should set out plans for the financial services sector that they can meet. Our Jillian Gray tells us more.
In just 6 months, the European Union will again rate the Bahamas based on its code of conduct for tax purposes. President of the Bahamas Institute of Chartered Accountants, Gowan Bowe, said the scrambling the government did earlier this year to have the Bahamas removed from the blacklist is a clear indicator that it is reactive and has not been keeping its finger on the pulse of the financial services industry.
The first thing is, I think when we said that we were surprised or what we considered to be blindsided by the blacklisting, that actually is an indication that we have not been appropriately keeping our finger on the pulse. And so when we stop and look at coming onto the gray list, it certainly is not an indication of being out of the woods, because we were surprised when we got onto the black. And so from that perspective, if we are so confident on the gray and coming onto the white list or being removed entirely in that sense, then our pulse taking has to be far greater.
Although the Bahamas has been removed from the blacklist and put on the gray list, there is a possibility that the Bahamas could be put back on the blacklist if it is seen as non-compliant. The Deputy Prime Minister insisted, however, that the Bahamas is on track to comply with the European Union's deadline by year's end.
We have given the European Union a timeline for all of the steps that we will take to make sure that we meet the compliance deadline of December 31st, 2018. We're still very much on track with respect to that. We will be coming out with some additional legislation once we go through the summer break. And then I think it's in the October timeframe, we start to do some training to ensure that everybody's on board and we are ready for December 31st deadline.
The government has been criticized by the opposition, which says the Bahamas seems to be chasing an ever-changing goalpost. PLP leaders have called on the government to reveal what it has agreed to in order to be removed from the European Union's blacklist. Now, Bowe says government's plan to table a compendium of bills has not been properly vetted by the financial services sector.
I think when we look at the financial services sector, certainly with WTO, as well as with the EU blacklisting and what I would call the Bahamian economy, government cannot be seen to be implementing or enacting a compendium of legislation that has not, if you will, been vetted and understood. And this is not to say you're talking about 3 years, 4 years. This is saying that, yes, getting them out in the public domain and saying it's out for public comment and you have a week to respond is not really consultation. That's placating.
Bowe added that the Bahamas must set a plan for the financial services sector and added that an accountability framework is paramount to ensure deadlines are met.
I think government just has to demonstrate that it has a plan and that it is not just rushing it down the throats, because whilst we may want to appease those persons in whose environment we want to operate, we have to remember we have a country that have people here, and the knock-on effect of decisions has to be taken into consideration.
Reporting for Our News Weekend, I'm Jillian Gray.
All right, thanks a lot, Jillian. And we will take our first break here. But still ahead tonight, the former opposition leader gives reasons why she says the Free National Movement is losing support. That's coming up when Our News returns.